Well, they already had a motion to adjourn.
Oh, well, that wouldn't be fair to our new finance director, no, would it?
No.
Oh, she was in favor of it.
She said- Did you move or
my watch
did you do
runs
the
slow. All right.
second on the
Okay,
motion?
we're ready.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll convene the regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance and Ways and Means Committee for July 19th, 2021. The purpose of this meeting is to review city finances for the second quarter of 2021. And I'd just like to say that we look forward to this, our first opportunity to hear from our new finance director, Dana Pinkert, and we look forward to that. We also received via email a copy of the first half 2021 waste diversion report. This is an informational report provided to update council members and will not be discussed at this meeting unless members have questions about it. It was an informational report. We're now past the midpoint of 2021. As with previous updates, I believe that this update and subsequent updates for the third and fourth quarters of 2021 will continue to inform council members and set the stage for creation and passage of a responsible 2022 city budget. And I look forward to the presentation. So, Sandy, any opening remarks?
All I have to say is I want to welcome our new person in charge of our funds and hope that you are enjoying your job already and that you continue to enjoy it, and that you're falling in love with Bowling Green already.
Yeah, two things. In addition to also welcome, I think one of the keys to your enjoying working here is directly related to the number of interactions you have with council. So just keep that in mind. I did want to, I know we're not discussing it here, but I did want to thank Amanda for this report. Very well put together and gives a lot of good information. Thank you. And the third is to thank you, Greg. It's a good thing that you set up quarterly meetings to go over the finances. So kudos to you, sir.
All right. Well, without any further ado, Dana, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and good evening. And I am falling in love with Bowling Green so far, except for my house hunt. Everything is going smashingly. So
I love to hear those words.
No buyer does.
So we are here. We're halfway through the year, and this report, I'm going to focus on revenue, mainly because it is the template I got from Brian. I realize there's no expenses on this side, but we have been focusing on revenue, especially with the last year or so. And then as we go into the next quarter, I'll have some more detail on expenses. So what we will go over, in brief, income taxes, general revenue fund as a whole, and then just an update on the American Rescue Plan. With that, we have the income tax, and as it was the last quarter, we are up from our budget estimates. We're up even from obviously last year at this time. And, but even though it's more than budgeted and more than cash expectation, it really can't be considered surplus funds because the budget was passed with, taking into account of using over $1 million in cash fund balances. So anything that comes in higher than the estimates relieves some of that burden, but I just would want to caution that we don't consider it surplus or a windfall because we're still watching that. If anybody has any questions about these, they're really just the year-to-date total income tax. And then, and this is a graph on it where it shows you the difference between the estimate and the actual and where we're at. You can see we're annually, year to date, we're high. Obviously, it's a little lower in June, but it was way high in May. So, picture. And this is the total general fund type of revenue. So it's not just income tax. And I know Brian liked to remind you, and it's a good practice to We watch income tax because that's our main fund. You know, it does get split up, but the general fund has a lot of parts and pieces to it that we bring in revenue. And again, it's up from budgeted and where it should be. So that's good. And this is also revenue that we'll take into account when we consider our revenue loss for some of those American Recovery Funds. So it's not just the income tax, it's the whole general revenue. And it's promising that it's up. And if you have any questions, I can try to answer them, but this is collective through year to date.
No questions.
And then again, just another picture to kind of, you can see where we're at budget wise and, you know, where they've come in actual. And this is just the revenue in context. You can see that it's above the estimates. Saying it again, the estimates were based on recovery this year at the second half from COVID. It does look like that's happening. But again, a reminder that we are budgeted to use some of those reserves. So hopefully it'll come in enough that we don't have to use as much of them. And with that, American Recovery Plan update, we did get the first half of our funds, more than 3.6 million. The second half is inspected in 2022, and they do just send that. We don't, it's not a reimbursement based, say. But there is a quarterly reporting requirement, whether we've used any of it or not. We'll have to have our first report in October. And we are continuing to receive guidance and looking at the guidance from the U.S. Treasury and other professional groups regarding the allowable uses. And with that, I know the mayor has an update on his plan for those funds and the city's standpoint. So.
Thank you, Dana. So I thought I would take just a couple of minutes and update council on our thoughts regarding ARPA funds. As Dana has indicated, we did receive our first allotment from the federal government. And also, we continue to monitor the regulations and the interpretations for allowable expenditures. It is continuing to come in and evolve, and we continue to be focused on that information as we see it. As we previously mentioned, I had established some guiding principles that we would consider when considering how we would expend the funds. We would consider one-time use for the funds. We would not want to create programs that would create an ongoing expense stream. We would want to avoid duplication of efforts from other entities or other political subdivisions, and we want to maximize the community impact. We note that this really is a significant opportunity for the community. We take the responsibility very seriously for the expenditure of these funds. We recognize that we must be responsible and accountable for our decisions. We are fortunate that the current timeline, we feel, does allow for several years for us to utilize the funds. Current guidance tells us that the funds need to be encumbered by the end of 2024, and those programs must be completed. Funds must be paid out by the end of 2026. So as we continue to look at the four major areas defined in my previous comments, I'm sorry, with the four major areas that are defined in guidance, I'm focusing back on the areas that I had previously identified that would be major categories of focus. Those categories were neighborhood development and community assistance. This topic really has been explored extensively in the past decade through our various planning processes, and the ARPA funds could be a way for us to enhance existing programs with additional funding and explore other opportunities to develop our neighborhoods, improve our housing stock, support the community. Residential paving is a topic that is frequently discussed when we're discussing neighborhood revitalization efforts, and we're focused quite intently on opportunities associated with the robust residential paving program. Next category would be livability, accessibility, and enrichment. There are many opportunities we think to maximize opportunity in this area. Among those under consideration are the installation of a multi-use path to create a bicycle pedestrian link to and from the community center, the Cogan's Crossing, and the high school. Expand sidewalk replacement within our neighborhoods. Make investments within our park system. We're considering the possibility of creating a pedestrian path around the city park and partnering with in the development of a fully ADA accessible and inclusive playground also in the city park. We're considering complete street elements and how we could maximize investment for ADA improvements and for various forms of transportation throughout the city. We're considering ways we can invest in infrastructure in the downtown public areas. We're looking at possibilities associated with downtown public restrooms, considering the possibility of combining this need with an infrastructure improvement at our downtown historic police station and the former Huntington mini bank. We think that there's value in conducting a right-of-way study to figure out ways that we can maximize public spaces for business and community uses in the downtown area. We're looking at ways we can expand green initiatives. For example, we're looking to determine how we could install additional electric charging car charging stations in downtown public parking lots, and how we could potentially work with private businesses to create incentives for electric charging stations to be installed in private parking lots that would be more accessible to the public, like hotels and restaurants and those sorts of things. Another category is job creation and economic development. We think it's possible for us to expand the Bowling Green community's ability to attract high-paying jobs by investing in needed infrastructure within existing business parks. Actively seeking proposals for the development of city-owned property in the corner of Manville and Worcester and the relocation of city facilities from that site, and seek opportunities to assist existing local businesses as well. City financial stability is the final category. A major component of ARPA is a recovery of lost revenue from the pandemic. As Dana has explained, because there was such a significant loss of income in 2020, the income tax projection for 2021 was impacted. The general fund, for example, had over $1 million gap between projected revenue and expense. While our receipts have been higher than anticipated, the city was impacted by reduced income tax receipts. So a focus of ARPA is to provide economic stability to local governments, and we'll be looking at closely at this provision of the act. So in terms of timeline, our thought is that we would use the balance of 21 primarily to study the regulation and begin to make plans for future projects and expenditures. Beginning in 2022, I think that we could expect to see the implementation of some of these projects that have been developed. And we'll also see continue to create plans for projects that would be implemented in years to follow, 23 and 24 as well. So that's just kind of a snapshot of our current thinking. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. I've heard you give this list numerous times, and every time you mention neighborhood development and something else. And every time I'm taking notes and I miss what that second part of neighborhood
Well,
development.
it's neighborhood development. You're looking for the heading?
Yes.
Is that revitalization?
Neighborhood development and community assistance.
Community assistance. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
And I would just stress that, these are preliminary. Although we've spoken of these concepts before, they're preliminary concepts. We continue to listen to constituents. We'll look forward to an opportunity to talk with City Council about options, but that it's an ongoing process. Guidance continues to change, and we take the responsibility very serious.
I'm encouraged by your list, Mayor, and I guess the rules work in our favor, as you pointed out, end of 2024 for encumbering the funds. So seems like a reasonable approach at this moment.
Yeah, I think that because of the timelines involved, it's important for us to be deliberate in our planning and make sure that we're having broad-based community conversations and building consensus for a lot of these projects.
And if federal government follows through, we may be going through this process again
Yep.
for another 2
Correct.
to 3 year period, right?
Correct.
Very good.
As a follow-up to that, are you thinking of the things you just mentioned for the first half only, or the first and second
We're
half?
thinking of the total.
Total.
The 7.3.
Okay,
But our approach has been to develop specific projects with costs associated with them.
mm-hmm,
So we will, of course, plan within our means. We won't overextend the city and enter into commitments based on funding that we do not have in hand.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the list. Just to give you some feedback, I've knocked on over 850 doors this year so far, and I can tell you that some of the top concerns, and I don't ask people specifically about any particular topic. I leave it open so I don't bias it. And I can tell you that streets, sidewalks, and drainage are the top 3 concerns of those that have discussed things with me. So it's encouraging, and just thought you'd like to have some positive feedback that when you're talking about streets, that's one of the items. And I know with the sidewalks, with the multi-use paths that you're talking about, that is sidewalks, and then just general monies for perhaps enhancing the 50/50 program and going after that. So it's great. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I can say, since we have some time, I will add to that as a realtor, I have to say that what I hear when people are looking for houses, trying to decide where they want to live, that you've covered, I mean, this pretty much covers what people are looking at. But the words we hear as realtors are they're looking for livability, accessibility, and enrichment. And of course, everyone initially just considers the infrastructure to be in good shape, where in some communities they shouldn't assume it's such as the water service, certain people north of us. But I do think we are in as good a shape in Bowling Green on it as we could possibly financially. A small town. We are a small town, but we've been wise in keeping up with it. I'm really happy to hear the words livability, accessibility come out of leadership's mouth, because that is what people are really looking for.
I have nothing further. I really appreciate you jumping in and adding content. They're very beneficial. So.
Great. Thank you.
No, and thank you for that report.
Thank you.
And look forward to future quarters. And barring any closing comments from Bill or Sandy?
I have nothing planned. We have time. You don't want to continue any further, or did you want to talk about
The agenda,
what's up?
if you've got something you'd like to talk about finance related, but other than that, I've got no agenda items. I don't see any issues from the crowd, so I guess we'll just we'll conclude the meeting. Thank you, folks. You can still talk now. The
No.
meeting's over.